Jocelyn's a woman whose life has been captivated by tabloids and fascination from the public. She's known as the Catwoman of New York. Jocelyn's dramatic transformation through plastic surgery has made her a global icon. But beyond her face, it's her personality, her outrageousness that made her who she is. From her jaw-dropping $2.5 billion divorce settlement, one of the largest in history, to her obsession with the feline form. Jocelyn's life has been filled with so many random stories, from her marrying so wealthy to her becoming addicted to plastic surgery, so determined to look like a cat, which who really wants to do that? It kind of reminds me of the furries. But who is the real Jocelyn Wildenstein beyond the rumors and the headlines? Is she a misunderstood woman navigating a world obsessed with appearances, or is she a symbol of excess and vanity gone too far? Before we dive into where she came from, I just want to react to some of these photos of the plastic surgery she has gone through throughout the years. And it's actually really sad to look at. Nicknamed the Catwoman of New York City, she's a socialite who became popular in the 90s during her divorce with her billionaire art dealer husband, Alec Wildenstein. She did disappear for a while, but not for long, because she is no stranger to media. In 2016, she actually faced charges for allegedly attacking her then boyfriend with scissors at her Trump World Tower apartment in New York City. 2 years later, in 2018, she filed for bankruptcy, even though she was reportedly worth billions. Jocelyn Wildenstein was born as Jocelynus Danis da Silva Berra Persist, which is such a long name. She was born on September 11th, 1955 in Switzerland. Now, besides her having a really long name, there's not much known about her upbringing. She was part of a middle-class family in Switzerland, and it looks like her father owned a department store and he was struggling. So they were truly middle class, maybe even a little bit lower class. She actually told Interview magazine that her childhood was fantastic. And that's interesting coming from someone who's so wealthy. I mean, she probably looks back in some ways like misses the simplicity of life before she had entered this wealthy status. But nonetheless, you see people who have extreme plastic surgery and you assume that they must gone through some trauma or they were abused as a child. But that's something that Jocelyn said did not happen. Here's a clip of one of my favorite TikTokers, Becca Day, talking about Jocelyn's early life.
She had a very normal middle-class upbringing. She had no kind of extravagant wealth of any kind. In fact, her father worked at a struggling sporting goods store while she was growing up. But at the age of 17, Jocelyn's very humble life would turn into something that was much, much more extravagant. Jocelyn began dating a Swiss film producer, and the two eventually ended up moving to Paris together.
So Jocelyn moved to a bigger city within Switzerland, and that's where she met her partner. Now, I don't know exactly why she decided to move to the big city before moving to Paris with her man, but she told the New York magazine that she never intended to pursue a career. Like, I guess when you asked her, what did you want to be when you grew up? She just did not have one. She said she had a very different talent. I never worry for my career. I'm very good at decoration. I may be extremely good at decoration, which is not a career, but I guess it can be, right? Home decor person. But Jocelyn had much bigger plans. Her filmmaker boyfriend Sergio and her traveled for 5 years, spending a lot of her time exploring Africa. She said, Africa is paradise. You meet people who look at life differently. They love the adventure. Actually, while in Africa, Jocelyn met Alec. It was 1977, and she was on a safari with friends in Kenya. Alec came from a family of art collectors and horse racing experts, which that just screams rich. She told Vanity Fair that on their first day together, they rode motorcycles to a hilltop and shared their first kiss. Jocelyn was having quite the life, but she still had her filmmaker boyfriend back in Paris. See, this Africa trip was kind of like a solo moment for her with friends. So she returned to Paris to her boyfriend Sergio, and Alec went back to New York, but they missed each other and they sent letters to each other. I guess at some point he sent white orchids to her. Actually, he filled a Paris salon completely with it so that she could get a surprise. He visited her in Paris soon after and proposed to her over dinner. They married a year after meeting in 1978 in Las Vegas. Actually, it wasn't even a year. It was months after they had met. So she just left her boyfriend and went off with Alec. And I mean, she must have put some spell on him because she got to like one of the richest guys, and he didn't like wait long. And I'm sure his family was like, oh, are you sure you don't want to wait a bit? And, you know, maybe a year before you go and marry this woman. But no, he couldn't wait. They married on April 30th, and they had a second wedding ceremony in Switzerland after. Alex's father, Daniel, was absent. He was against marriage in general. Alex said that my father checks things out. My father tried to warn me. So his father, I guess, did not believe in marriage, which is interesting because this is kind of, you know, back in the back like 50 years ago plus, so maybe even 100 years ago. So I'm surprised that this man is against marriage, probably because he's so wealthy that he understands that if you divorce, that it's going to be cut in half. Jocelyn revealed in the past that they spent about $1 million a month to maintain their lifestyle, which is wild. Despite them being so frivolous, Alec and Jocelyn were pretty reclusive. A friend told people in 1998 they had a tight group of friends and were very quiet people. Instead of hobnobbing with New York society, Jocelyn oversaw the sprawling Old Joey Ranch in Africa. So she was hanging out in Paris and in Switzerland and in Africa and in the Caribbean, which sounds lovely, opposed to just like hanging around the socialites in New York City. E! Network did a story about this family, so let's go ahead and react to some of their coverage.
Jocelyn married into the Wildenstein family, and they were one of the richest families ever. They own a French horse racing business, and they actually are one of the biggest art dealing families in the entire world.
Sold at $19 million.
I like understand why art is expensive, but I'll never understand like we kind of put the price onto these things. Like art dealers are a whole other kind of money. They just can throw around hundreds of thousands of dollars on a painting, and I can't.
When Jocelyn was married to Alec Wildenstein, they had a 5-story apartment in Manhattan. They had a castle outside of Paris, and they had a huge ranch in Kenya, Africa. Jocelyn and Alec obviously had this extravagant lifestyle, and their monthly bills were rumored to be $1 million a month.
Well, with all those properties to maintain, $1 million sounds about right. But where was all of that money going? Because I want to talk a little bit about Jocelyn's plastic surgery procedures. I feel like up until this point, we really haven't found a reason for why she did this to herself. Like, we haven't heard anything about her being insecure. She was hanging out with the socialites, at least at the beginning, so she wasn't like feeling peer pressured to do so. So now let's talk about why Jocelyn went under all of this surgery. Only 1 year into their marriage, Jocelyn started to use her wealth for cosmetic surgeries. Actually, she and her husband Alec got his and her eye lifts. So Jocelyn actually told Alec that his eyes looked baggy. So that's why they went in for these facelifts. Actually, their friend said that they didn't know Jocelyn at any point when she wasn't healing from some kind of surgery. So really, right at the beginning, she jumped into it, and her husband was on board at first, which is so scary to think about getting like a facelift back then. Like the technology just does not seem as advanced. Granted, they probably had the best doctors in the world, but it didn't stop there. After that, Jocelyn reportedly continued undergoing procedures, later claiming that part of why she got some facelift surgeries was because Alec hates to be with old people. Okay, so that's our first little red flag of trauma. Okay, so her husband hates to be with old people, so maybe she was then using that as an excuse to kind of like keep herself looking young. Daily Mail reported that she spent about $2 million on surgeries to please her husband, who loved big cats. She kept a lynx as a pet, telling Vanity Fair the lynx has the perfect eye. So again, kind of red flag number 2, but still kind of goes with the first one. Seems like her husband liked the look of cats, which that's a little freaky. Like, shouldn't he like the look of women? Humans, not animals. Despite Jocelyn getting into all these surgeries, she tried to tell people that a lot of it was her own natural look. It's just enhanced, that she has these high cheekbones and these cat eyes, which maybe she does. We could put up a picture on the screen of her before surgery, but the surgery really did a lot, Jocelyn. You can't convince me. Alec Wildenstein told Vanity Fair that she was crazy. I would always find out last. She was thinking that she could fix her face like a piece of furniture. Skin doesn't work that way, but she wouldn't listen. And that's a scary place to be in, to have someone in your life who is mentally ill, who has tons of money, and who's convinced that they can find a doctor to do a certain thing to their face. And then once they do that, they realize, oh, now I want to do this. And it's really like a obsession that never ends.
It's been estimated that she spent about $4 million on plastic surgery, so that's taking it to the extreme. She's famous for all this plastic surgery and is known as the Catwoman.
Well, she almost has gotten so much done, and she's so tight, and her eyes have been so pulled that she looks somewhat feline in nature.
It looks like to me that she's...
I'm surprised that she hasn't mentioned like Africa and seeing these African cats and just wanting to look like one of them.
had some cheek implants put in, giving her some very high cheekbones. And as she's gotten older, she's probably also had some facelifts done to keep that skin nice and taut.
Thank you for watching this clip from the Let's Get Into It podcast. To view the full episode, visit the link listed below.